Do some more practicing with factoring GCF. Okay, so I'm going to go through this worksheet. We're only going to be doing 7 of the questions out of the 8. I am eliminating this guy over here. Okay, and let's start at the top. I'm going to go through all of the steps so that if you feel like you forgot anything or you feel a little stuck on something, we'll go through all of it right now. Okay, so for question number 1, we want to factor 5b cubed minus 30. So the first thing we need to do is we need to list our factors of 5 and our factors of 30. So our factors of 5 are 1 and 5, and our factors of 30 are 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. Okay, so the numbers that both lists have in common are the 1s and the 5. So the GCF then is 5 because that is the bigger number. Just a quick reminder that if you don't know your factor lists, which is fine, you can use your calculator. You would go into your y equals, and in your y1, so for example with 5, you would type in 5 divided by x. And then you would go into the table and you would look at your table of values, and that's where you would get your list of factors. And then you would do the exact same thing for 30. You would do 30 divided by x, go into the table, and you get your list of factors, okay? All right, so now we know the GCF is 5, so now we are going to take our problem, our original problem, the 5b cubed minus 30, and we are going to divide each of our pieces by our GCF, which is 5. Okay, so here the 5s, they cancel out, or they actually reduce to 1, but we say cancel out, and we're left with b cubed minus, now 30 divided by 5, you put that in your calculator, is 6. Okay, so now to write our final answer, we just write down the GCF, which is 5, and then in parentheses you put what you got when you divided. So in this case, b cubed minus 6. Okay? All right. That's number 1. Okay? All right. So let's go to number 2. All right. So now we've got 36m plus 24. So let's start with our factor lists. So for 36, we've got 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 6 and 6. Okay? And now for 24, our list of factors are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. Okay? So now we're going to circle the numbers that we have in common. So we have 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 6, and I'm missing someone, the 12. Okay. So then from that list, we can see that our greatest common factor is 12. Okay, so we're going to take our original problem, the 36m plus 24, and we're going to divide each piece by the GCF, which is 12. So 36 divided by 12 is 3, and then we still have the m, plus 24 divided by 12 is 2. Okay? And now to write our final answer, we just put the GCF, and then in parentheses the 3m plus 2. Okay? All right. Very good. Okay. Now on number 3, now we're going to have variables as a part of our greatest common factor. So If you think about first, let's just talk about the factors of 3 and 2. So our factors of 3 are 1 and 3, and the factors of 2 are 1 and 2. So the only number that these two guys have in common is 1. So we don't really worry about the greatest common factor then with the numbers if the only thing they have in common is 1. So that's just not really a part of the greatest common factor. But we do have the variables. We have a to the 8th and a to the 7th. So in a previous lesson, I had mentioned that when we're dealing with variables, the GCF is always going to be the lower exponent. So in this case, the GCF is going to be a to the 7th. Okay? So now we're going to take our original problem and divide each of our pieces by a to the 7th. Okay? And remember, we discussed that when we divide variables, we subtract our exponents. So here we still have the 3 that didn't go anywhere, but then when we do 8 minus 7, we're left with a to the 1st, or just a, plus, now 2a to the 7th over a to the 7th. Now what happens when you've got the exact same value top and bottom, these guys just cancel out, and then you're left with 2. Okay? So then to write our final answer, we are going to write the GCF, which is a to the 7th, and in parentheses, 3a plus 2. Okay? All right. On to the next. Okay? Now this guy is actually, we really don't even need to do a whole lot because you can kind of see just by looking at the 3 values that the number they obviously have in common is going to be 3. Now, you might ask yourself, well, should I be putting an X with that? Well, if you look carefully, you'll notice that only the first 2 pieces have X's. The third one does not. So X is not going to be a part of the greatest common factor because not all of the pieces have that. Okay? So we've got 3x squared plus 3x plus 3. And we are dividing each of our pieces by 3. Okay? Now, if I'm dividing a number by itself, it simplifies to 1. So for the first 2 guys here, so you can write 1x squared, but writing x squared is fine. Plus, same thing happens here. Now you can write 1x, but also writing x is fine. And now be careful here. This guy at the end does not just disappear. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Okay? So that, you have to remember to include that 1 at the end when you are dividing. So, now to write our answer, we put our GCF, and then we put x squared plus x plus 1. Okay? All right, very good. And number 5. So actually the first thing I'm going to do on number 5 is I'm going to draw in my invisible 1 as my exponent. Now this problem, your GCF is going to have a number and a variable involved. So let's list our factors of 6. So 1 and 6, and 2 and 3. And then our factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Okay? And so our numbers in common are 1, 2, 3, and 6. Okay? So the first part of our GCF is 6. Now, we have to also see that both of these guys have variables. So remember, we take the lower exponent, which is x to the first. So you can either write 6x to the first, or just 6x. Okay? All right, so now we're going to take our original problem and we are going to divide each piece by our GCF, the 6x to the first. Okay, so our 6's here, they reduce to 1 or cancel out. And then x squared over x to the first, if we subtract our exponents, we're left with x to the first. Plus, now 12 divided by 6 is 2. And then the x to the first over x to the first, that's going to cancel out or simplify to 1. So that's the x guys there are gone. Okay? So now to write our final answer, we write down our GCF, so 6x. You can put to the first power, you don't have to. And then parentheses, what we got over here, x plus 2. All right? Okay. All right, 2 more. Okay, so on number 6, we are going to first list our factors of 4 and 10. So our factors of 4 are 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. And our factors of 10 are 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. Okay? And let's look and see who we have in common. 1s and the 2s. So the beginning of our GCF is going to be 2. And now let's look at our variables. So remember, we always take whoever has the lower exponent, which is going to be y squared. Okay. So now let's rewrite our original problem. So 4y to the 5th minus 10y squared. And we're dividing each piece by 2y squared, our GCF. So in the first one, 4 divided by 2, we get 2. Now, oh, that's a 2 there. 5, remember when we're dividing here, we subtract our exponents. So 5 minus 2 is 3. Okay? Minus, now 10 divided by 2 is 5. And here, the y squared over the y squared, it just cancels out, reduces to 1. So you don't have to put any y's there. Okay? And now to write our final answer, we just put our GCF, so the 2y squared, and then in parentheses, 2y cubed minus 5. Okay? All right, last one. Okay, so we've got 8p cubed plus 24p squared plus 16p. So I'm just going to add on my invisible, oh, that's a little far away, hang on. So here's my invisible 1 as my exponent. And now let's list all of our factors. So our factors of 8 are 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. Our factors of 24 are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. And then our factors of 16 are 1 and 16, 2 and 8, 4 and 4. Okay? So now we're going to see who we have in common. Everybody's got 1s, everybody's got 2s, everybody's got 4s, and everybody's got 8s. So our greatest common factor, then, the beginning of it is going to be 8. And now if you look back to the original problem, you'll notice that all 3 of the terms in our polynomial have p's. So p is going to be a part of our GCF. And we take the lower exponent, which is to the first power. So our GCF is 8p to the first, or just 8p. Both of them mean the same thing. All right, and now we've got 8p cubed plus 24p squared plus 16p to the first. And we are dividing everything by 8p to the first. Okay, so over here, the 8s, they reduce to 1, and which you don't have to write because it's the coefficient. And then p cubed over p to the first, we subtract our exponents, and we are left with p squared. Okay? Plus, now 24 divided by 8 is 3. And p squared over p to the first, remember we subtract our exponents, and we are left with p to the first, or just p. Plus 16 divided by 8 is 2. And then we have p to the first over p to the first. Since they're the exact same thing, they just cancel out or reduce to 1. So our final answer then is 8p. You can put to the first power, you don't have to. And then parentheses, p squared plus 3p plus 2. Okay? All right, so that was more practice on factoring GCF. So this will be on Google Classroom. In addition, you will have the answer key. And all right, thank you for watching. Bye.